January 6th, 1947, in the city of Newark, Ohio. The postman was delivering mail along King Avenue when he came to the home of 72-year-old Laura Belle Devlin. She and her husband Tom were considered an eccentric older couple by their neighbors, and while the postman was accustomed to seeing Mr. Devlin during his morning rounds, he thought it strange it had been 2 weeks with no sign of him. He inquired about this to Mrs. Devlin, and Laura Belle told him that Tom had gone to visit relatives in Philadelphia, and then, rather awkwardly, she held up a letter that she claimed had been sent from her husband's cousin where he was staying. The postman, suspecting something strange, looked closely at the envelope and saw no trace of a stamp, and the postmark had been delicately drawn in by hand. He then kindly persuaded Mrs. Devlin to accompany him to the police station. Once they arrived, an officer asked Laura Belle if they could open the envelope from Philadelphia, and what they found was a letter informing of the death of Thomas Devlin. It read that his body had been cremated, and the rest of his family would be traveling back to Ireland for the remaining services. And Laura Belle, the picture of a sweet old lady with her extensive collection of antique lace, was cordial and flat-voiced, even when the police compelled her to share what really happened. It didn't take much effort, and without changing demeanor, she began recounting a very different story. "He was always threatening to kill me," she said, "so I decided to end his life. Apparently 2 weeks earlier, Thomas Devlin had complained about dinner and hurled a dish at the head of his wife of 40 years. Laura Belle finally lost her temper and began to beat her husband to death with her bare fists. Afterwards, she broke as many of his bones as she could with a sickle, and then dismembered her husband's body with a handsaw. To dispose of the evidence, Laura Belle decided to burn his remains in both the kitchen wood stove and the living room coal stove, piece by piece. The rest of him she dispersed in the backyard. Laura Belle was still in the course of incinerating the remains when she was arrested. After she recounted the events, she turned to a policeman and asked, "Can I go home now?" She was charged with first-degree murder, but refused to have her photo taken without her hairnet. When an officer began to take her fingerprints, she demanded they do it gently so as not to hurt her fingers by pressing too hard. "That ink will make my hands dirty," she said. A verdict was returned of homicide due to senile dementia. Mrs. Laura Belle Devlin was transferred to Lima State Hospital for the criminally insane, and just 1 week later, on March 29th, 1947, Laura Belle Devlin passed away from pneumonia.